Hi, I'm Patrick, and I'm an old guy, and I like old guy guitar stuff. I like tube amps cranked up to the max. I like micing up my own guitar cabinets. I like rack mount effects. But I'm also evolved. It's 2022. A lot of the great tones that are out there are coming from software companies that only exist on software and only exist on plugins for a digital audio workstation. So I've evolved. I started using those. I'm having a great time. But when I talk to my old guy guitar friends, I get a lot of crickets and blank stares when I ask them what they think about the newest Neural DSP plugin. So what I'm going to do is do from the most basic level, identify the hardware that you need, identify some free software that can be used so you could get started doing this for nearly free, download it, install it, configure it all for use, and then get some tones out of here. And I'm shooting this at my dining room table instead of in the studio, so that if you're watching this at home and you're maybe a beginner that doesn't have a whole bunch of gear, that you know that this is something you could do too, instead of having to go scrape some money together to get an amp and a guitar. Maybe you can just get a guitar and an audio interface, and that might save you a few bucks. So listen up, stick around, and I'm going to show you how to do this. Okay, so the first thing that we need to talk about is the hardware that you need to get started using a guitar and playing it through a computer and getting some great tone out of some software. So the first thing that you need is a guitar. And yes, I have to say this because someone will ask. So the next thing that you're going to need is a 1/4-inch instrument cable. This is what you use to plug your guitar into things. The next thing you're going to need is an audio interface. Audio interfaces can be very simple or they can be very complicated. They can cost anywhere from $50 to $3,000. So for these purposes, we're going to use an older USB interface. It's a PreSonus audio box. This one's almost 10 years old. Goes over USB 2.0 standard. And this is the lovely piece of hardware that's going to take your awesome riffs and the analog signal they create, and it's going to turn it into a digital signal that goes over USB and plugs into your computer and lets you use your guitar sound through a digital audio workstation and have a virtual place to use virtual amps and virtual pedals and virtual cabinets and all kinds of great things all in the box. But you want to be able to hear that, so you're also going to need just a decent pair of headphones is good. These are actually a pretty expensive pair, but a decent pair you have laying around will let you monitor the sound off of your audio interface. So the next thing we need to do is arrange our software. So if you check in the description, I put in a set of links that show you where there's some free software that you need to download and get started. And I'm going to go to that and I'm going to show you where to download the software and install it. We want to identify a couple of file folders before we download anything. The first one is in our C drive program files, not program files x86, program files. Look for a file called VST Plugins. If that file called VST Plugins is not there, right-click, create a file, name it VST Plugins. VST is the file extension that a lot of these plugins use is .vst or .dll, which is a system file that your digital audio workstation will use to identify what plugin to use. Now that might sound like a bunch of nerd speak, but it's something that might be important later. So that's the first one you need. And then just as technique, not procedure, I went ahead and made an installer file where we're going to copy all of our software installers in so that we can use them from one place to install everything. It's a good technique to use. I've installed a lot of software because, as you can see, also a nerd and an old guy. Now the first thing we're going to get is we need to get some software that makes our USB interface work with Windows. We're going to get what's called ASIO for all. Now this is a low latency driver that allows you to use an audio interface and convert an analog to a digital signal. Now, you can check the website is asioforall.org. There's a link in the description. We're going to come here and I'm speaking English, so I'm going to get the English version. and I'll save that to my installers folder. Now, if you're an iSnob and you're doing this on the Mac, you don't need this. The next thing we need to get is a digital audio workstation. We need our virtual studio that we can place our virtual amps and our virtual cabinets and things in. So Reaper is not a free software, but it can be evaluated for free for 60 days. Now, I do have a permanent Reaper license, but I'm going to use the evaluation version for the purposes of this video. So let's come to the Reaper website, which is, the link is in the description. And we're going to download the Windows 64-bit. If we're using Windows 10, we're using Windows 64-bit Windows, right? So we're going to save that in our installers file. Now, if you're a super nerd and you use Linux, Reaper actually makes a version for Linux, so you can get that. The next thing we need to get is our amplifier. So we need an amplifier to plug our guitar into, right? So check the link in the description for Blue Cat Audio. They have a freeware amplifier. And on the site, come over to where it says download, right here. And we're going to download WinVST. The Windows VST version is what we're going to download. So let's save that file in our installers. Now that we have an amplifier, we need a speaker cabinet to put it to, right? So this is where things can become a little more complicated. There's a lot of speaker emulation software, requires a library of impulse responses, or IRs. Without digging too deep into specifics, I'm just going to show you where to download and place those. So let's go ahead to Mercurial's website, and we're going to scroll down. I've been scrolling while we're talking, and we're going to get a modeled high-watt 4x12 cabinet. So you see, come over to where the Windows symbol is here, and download VST for Windows 64-bit. That's what we want. And we're going to save that, and it's a zip file, so we'll have to unzip it. So we're going to still save that to our installers folder. Now, before we leave this, look up here to where it says EIR library. We also need to download this and place it. So we're going to download our EIR library, and that's also a zip file. So we're going to download that to our installers folder, and we'll place that later. While we're on here, Mercurial also has a free pedal that we can use that a lot of you might be familiar with. It's a Tube Screamer model. So we're going to download, go to the Windows icon, download VST for Windows, and we're going to save that in our installers folder. Okay, and last, because we want to have some fun, let's get a reverb and delay program. Valhalla makes a free reverb and delay program, and they have a lot of free demos. But we're going to go ahead and go to their website, scroll down to the bottom, and we're going to get Valhalla Supermassive. It's a delay program with a whole bunch of presets, and the install link is down here in small print under Windows Installers on the bottom right side. So we're going to go ahead and click that and save it to our installers folder. Okay, that's all the software that we're going to need to get started playing guitar on our computer. So now that we've downloaded all the software we're going to need, identified all the hardware that we're going to need, let's install the software and make everything work together. Now, I found the best way to do this is to install all the software at once, and then we'll configure it. So this is going to start off easy and get a little tricky, and then it's going to be easy again. So I'll just walk you through the entire thing. We'll go to our installers folder that we made. We can see all of our different downloads. And let's start with the ASIO for all, because that's the driver that's going to make our audio interface work for us. So just go through the setup, read the license agreement. I've already read it. And go ahead and install it. And it's done. That was easy, right? The next thing we need to install is our digital audio workstation, and that's Reaper. So come to the Reaper install. Double click it. This is an executable. Read the license agreement, and let's go ahead and we'll install the full version. Now you can evaluate this full version for free for 60 days, but it does cost $60 for a permanent license for an individual once you decide to purchase it. Reaper is not free. And again, I have a permanent license for Reaper. I'm just using the demonstration version for this video. Okay, we do not want to run this now because we're going to install our VSTs first. So the next one we're going to do is our amplifier. Read the terms of the license agreement again. Now, this wants to put it in a 32-bit folder, so we're going to change this. So go to your PC, your hard drive, go down to program files, but don't pick the x86 one, just pick program files. Go down to VST Plugins, the file that we made, program files, VST Plugins, and that's where we want to install our amp. Okay. And now we're going to go to our pedal next. This is another executable. So we'll just double click that, getting our front end taken care of first here, I guess. So when you run the configuration for this, read the agreement. And now this is trying to build its own folder and program files, but we're going to skip that and we're going to go Windows, Program Files, and we're going to go down to VST Plugins, to our file folder that we made. And we're going to go ahead and place it there. So for this one, we're going to do the same thing. This is trying to install it in a Steinberg folder. That's for a different digital audio workstation that we're not going to use. So we're just going to place that 32-bit version. We're just going to place it where all the other ones are in our VST. And now it's asking for where the 64-bit goes. We're going to put the same, go back to the same one, Program Files, VST Plugins, instead of having it create a Steinberg folder because we're not using Pro Tools. We don't need that. Okay, so we're going to unselect that VST2 and the AAX plugin. We don't need these. We're just using the 64-bit VST2 plugin. So to finish our installation, we can just go ahead and click Next, and it should place this. Our destination location is Program Files, VST Plugins, and then it's going to make its own folder within there. All right, that's finished. So now's where things can get a little tricky. We have to unzip our zip files that we downloaded. So right click, we're going to do the delay first here. So right click on our delay and extract all, and you can just extract it in place, and it's going to make an identical folder. So now it's opened up an executable. We'll click that to install our delay. So when you get the Windows protected prompt, you can go here and run anyway. We're going to uncheck VST3 and AAX. All we're going to install is the VST 2.4 plugin. Go ahead and read through the agreement like all the rest. Now let's change the file to our VST plugins file in Program Files, VST Plugins. Click Install. Okay, so our reverb and delay is installed. So back to our installers folder, we have two to do for the cabinet. So we have to install the cabinet itself, and then we have to install the library of impulse responses. Now, if you are a super nerd, you use Linux, you're familiar with installing in resource libraries, but this is maybe a little different for you Windows users, and this will be completely foreign to Mac users. So what we're going to do is extract these because they came as zip files. And we'll just extract them in place. And we'll do the same with the library, except the library we are going to extract to our VST Plugins file folder. Program files, VST Plugins, and that's where we're going to extract that. Well, we'll just take a moment. That's a lot of impulse responses. Okay, so it's extracted in place. We don't have to do anything else with that. Now that we've extracted the actual cabinet itself, we have to, this is a DLL file. Notice the file extension .dll. We're going to have to copy this and paste it into our VST Plugins file. So come over here to the window that just opened after you extracted the impulse response library, program files, VST Plugins, and just right click and paste it in here. And there it is. So now we have all of our software installed. The next thing we're going to do is configure our digital audio workstation and start using these plugins. So the next steps that I'm going to show you are how to start up and configure your digital audio workstation. So if you remember, we downloaded Reaper. So we should have a shortcut on our desktop to Reaper now after installing it. Because you remember we installed it, but we didn't start it up. So let's start it up now, and this is going to give us the option to configure it. So after our startup screen, remember we're evaluating Reaper for free for 60 days, still evaluating. First thing we're going to do is go to Options, Preferences. We're going to go initialize our audio interface. So we're going to Audio, Device, and we want this to say ASIO. It already configured and says ASIO. And then the ASIO driver says ASIO for all v2. That's what we downloaded and installed. So it's automatically found that and configured it. Our first in and last in, these are inputs, and we're just doing 1 and 2. Our audio interface has 2 inputs. Now our output range is just showing a default from the computer for right now, because our next step that we have to do is click this ASIO configuration button. So click the ASIO configuration button, and it sees our AudioBox USB audio interface. So let's power that on, select it, and we're going to set the buffer size to 128. That's a nice balance of clarity and latency. We'll set that to 128, and then we can close that. Next, we're going to go down in the preferences to where it says Plugins, VST. And we're going to edit the path list. You see how this is checked off? It says scan for new updated plugins on startup. So let's do edit path list, add a path with this PC, our hard drive, program files, VST plugins, and that's our target folder. Now hit apply, hit OK. Now go to track, insert new track, and hit the record arm, and it sees AudioBox USB 1 as the input. So now that we've configured our digital audio workstation, we're going to close it out and then restart it, and it should restart and have all the plugins available that we programmed in. So let's close Reaper and start it back up, and it's going to scan for VSTs. Looks like it might have already scanned them the first time. But now when we go back to options and preferences, we should see under audio and device, we have an audio box USB 1 and 2 for the inputs, audio box 1 and 2 for the outputs, because we have 2 outputs on this particular audio interface. And now, go ahead, plug in your guitar. Plug in your headphones and adjust it to a normal volume. Now let's check and see if we have a dry signal. So you can hear your dry signal. Now let's start adding in these plugins so that you have a virtual amp and cabinet and a delay and a pedal. So let's start with the amplifier. So go to the FX section on this track that we inserted. And we highlight VST if it's not already highlighted, and we can start with our amp. So it was a Blue Cat audio amp. We'll add that in. And here's our amp. So let's go to one of the factory presets. Okay, so that's just the preamp section. We deselect it. There's your dry signal. Add that in. Sounds pretty good, but we don't have a cabinet yet, so let's add our cabinet that we downloaded. We're going to add Mercurial Cab V3, scan that and input it here. And we have some choices of microphones, but we're going to stick with the SM57. Turn the power up a little in no input tuning. Amp and cabinet. That's great. We have an amp and cabinet already, but we don't have to stop there because we downloaded a delay and reverb patch, so let's add that in. And it's right here, TSC 1. Or I'm sorry, that's our pedal. We'll get that one in a moment. But Valhalla Supermassive, that's our delay and reverb patch. Let's add that in. And we'll pick a reverb preset for now. How about Reverb 2000? Mix is a little high on that. And there you are, a glassy clean with a reverb. That sounds really good. This is free software. It sounds this good. That's great. Let's put these so they're all populated up here. So now we still have that pedal to add in. So let's add our tube screamer in and get a little power here. You notice all of that fuzz. That's because this is an order of operation here. This is our chain. And you wouldn't put a drive pedal after your cabinet or after the reverb on something, would you? So let's put that at the front where it belongs. And dial in a little drive. Dial it level back out a little. Tone in. It's got an 808 or mod setting on it. That's kind of cool. Let's try the mod. So there you have it. We got a drive pedal, an amp, a cabinet, and a reverb and delay. And all of that for nearly free, less the cost of the audio interface and a pair of headphones. So I hope that this has been an informative video for you. I hope that you've been able to identify the hardware that you need, identify some free software, download it, install it, configure a digital audio workstation to use, and import these plugins and be able to use those with your guitar. And if you're watching this to learn how to do that, or if you're trying to learn how to use a DAW to do your podcast about your ceramic owls collection, I don't know. I hope that this has shown you how to do that. Thank you very much for tuning in, and enjoy. Make a lot of noise. Bye bye.